Hello, and welcome to the Murder, She Wrote Rewatch podcast. We're back again, and today we're taking a look at the episode Sudden Death. Now, this is one of those episodes that I remember not having seen, but I remember this type of episode being used quite a lot back in the 80s and 90s of sitcoms and drama shows and stuff like that, where something completely wild and unexpected and out of left field comes out and just all of a sudden happens. In this particular instance, it is the fact that Jessica Fletcher ends up inheriting part ownership of a football team. Just out of the blue, a football team. Simply to, usually in such cases, I find that these episodes are to showcase a certain facet of culture that maybe some people aren't used to. So it's kind of interesting. So as usual, we're going to go and take a look at the players in our little game. First off, we're going to have a look at this fellow. The actor name of David Doyle. He played Brad Lockwood, who was the lawyer who shows up right off the bat. But we'll get to that in a minute. Brad Doyle, or David Doyle, sorry. He sadly passed away in 1997 at the age of 67. Poor fella. He is most known for John Bosley in Charlie's Angels, 1976 to 81. Ted Holmes in General Hospital. Lots of people would know that. He apparently did the voice of Grandpa Lou Pickles from the Rugrats TV show. So Grandpa Pickles, if any of you have watched Rugrats, you will know David Doyle's voice. And he was Walter Laughlin in Capricorn 1, 1977. I don't know that one. Let's see. What else has he been in? Nothing that I know. Oh, Sonic the Hedgehog. He was additional voices in 12 episodes of Sonic the Hedgehog. He did some voice work, so good on him. Good on him. He was in an episode of Darkwing Duck. That's cool. What else do we have? Voices. He did a lot of voice work. Definitely seems to be. Where is the Murder, She Wrote episode? There it is. Brad Lockwood. The only episode of Murder, She Wrote was this one. But yeah, he did a fair bit of voice work in his later years. Very cool. He plays a lawyer, which, while you might think might be stereotypically sleazy, you would be correct. You would be absolutely correct. There is also somebody who I mentioned last episode was going to be in this one. Bruce Jenner, a.k.a. Caitlyn Jenner. This is back in 1985, however, when he was named Bruce Jenner. And he was still a man. Let's see. He was apparently himself in Donald Duck's 50th birthday. And he was herself, Keeping Up with the Kardashians, Celebrity Double Dare. He was the host as himself. And producer of I Am Kate, which I believe is all about his transformation and identity. Only 15 acting credits. Basically as himself. Maybe. Nope. Skip Bayflick in the Hungover Games. I don't know that movie. But he played himself in several things. The Love Boat. Loverboy Bob. Loverboy Bob? Oh, Bruce. And he played Zach Farrell in this episode. And I know it's Caitlyn Jenner now, but for this episode, because this is the only episode of Murder, She Wrote that Bruce Jenner did as Bruce Jenner, and it will get confusing if I don't refer to him in the male pronoun, because that's what he is in this episode. Please bear with me. Oh, I did not know that. He apparently was in 6 episodes of Chips, the TV series. Officer Steve McLeish. Steve McLeish. L-E-I-S-H. McLeish. That name just is whatever. Oh, the 80s. So yeah, he's in this as Zach Farrell, who is a football player. And he has a wife played by Jan Smithers. Kathy Farrell is her character's name. Jan Smithers has a few more acting credits, 17. Best known for Bailey Quarters in WKRP in Cincinnati. Devoya in Where the Lilies Bloom. Lee's in Mr. Nice Guy, and Kathy Wakefield in Our Winning Season. None of which I have seen. The one episode of Murder, She Wrote she was in, and like The Love Boat, WKRP in Cincinnati, Bailey Quarters, it's probably the biggest one. That's about the only one I've probably seen her in, because she was in 86 episodes. Pretty sure I've seen her in one of them. And that's about it. Not a lot else. Her last acting credit was 1987. So she hasn't been acting in 87, 97, 206, 30 years. Wow. Yeah, she hasn't been acting for a while. But she plays Zach Farrell's wife. And they have a little girl played by Marcianne Warman, who has 7 acting credits to her name. The one episode of Murder, She Wrote. And given she was a child, she looked to be about somewhere around 8 to 10, 11 years old, something in that area. Maybe even younger. But this was in 1985. Her last acting credit was in 1989, which was only 4 years later. So she played children in a few. She was known for Cindy Stewart in Rocky Road, the TV series, which is like 58 episodes she was in. So she had a fairly big career there. But I don't know if... I guess she was one of the child actors that didn't make it big. It's possible. The only thing that I remember for sure seeing her in was this episode. Because I don't remember the Rocky Road TV series. And I'm not sure, because it doesn't say on her IMDb page if she is or not. But in this episode of Murder, She Wrote, the child actor that she's playing doesn't speak and is deaf and is using sign language. So I don't know if she as a actress, child actress, was deaf or not. But it would be kind of interesting if she was. Who else? Who else has we got? Let's take a look at the our murder victim, Phil Krueger, played by Alan Miller. Alan Miller is got 115 credits to his name. Best known for Quentin Quartermain in General Hospital, David Siegel in One Life to Live, both soap operas. Star Trek III, The Search for Spock, played an alien, and a bald glasses judge he played in Bad Words in 2013. Post-production, 2016, Irving was in a short. He was in an episode of Mad Men as Abraham Menken. A couple episodes of Law and Order. Oh, wow. And he's been in 5 episodes of Murder, She Wrote, all as different characters. So that's going to be interesting. One in 85, one in 86, one in 93, one in 94, and one in 95. What is this? He's apparently playing 2 characters in a single episode. 1993, called A Virtual Murder. I have a feeling that is one of the episodes, that's an episode they did that was all like, virtual reality, let's do an episode with that, because that's the hip new thing. Yeah, that's probably what that one is. But that one's not till 93, and we're only in 85. So it's going to be a little while before we get to that. But that I'm interested in. He's been in a ton of stuff. Brewster's Millions, I remember that movie. Political newscaster. For those of you who don't know, Brewster's Millions is a Richard Pryor movie with John Candy in it, where Richard Pryor's character ends up inheriting a whole bunch of money, but the stipulation is if he wants to inherit the entire fortune, which is like millions and millions and millions of dollars more than what he's been given, he has to spend like $30 million and not have a single asset to show for it at the end. And if he does that, then he gets all of the big millions. It's a rather cool comedy. Oh, he was in Nero Wolfe, Inspector Kramer, for 12 episodes. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. I can dig that. All right. But he plays one of the owners of the football team, Phil Kruger. Then we have John Beck, who plays Webb McCord, who is, I believe, one of the other owners of the football team, and on the football team in terms of managing it and whatnot. He is, let's see, he's known for Dallas, Mark Grayson, Sam Curtis on Flamingo Road, I don't know that one, Moon Pie in Rollerball. Now there's a cult classic that I'm sure some of you will have heard of. And Erno Wint in Sleeper. Don't know that one either. His last acting credit was a short in 2009 called Mesmerize Me. Time Cop, The Berlin Decision. O'Rourke, apparently. He played a few different characters in Walker, Texas Ranger. He did the voice of Punisher, Frank Castle, in the Spider-Man TV series. So that's pretty cool. What else has he been in? Matlock, Diagnosis Murder, Santa Barbara, Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country. He was uncredited for Walter. Perry Mason, a movie. There's Dallas. Yeah, I saw that one. He's in an episode of Magnum P.I. Edward T. Durant in Limbo, 1987. Huh. And where's the Murder, She Wrote? Where are you? We gotta go back for... No, we gotta go up. Did I missed it? Boop, 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 boop. Oh, that's why I missed it. It was under the 91 because he played Webb McCord in this episode, Sudden Death, and he played another character in the 1991 episode of Murder, She Wrote. He plays a rather handsome fellow with a mustache, looking all handsome and stuff. A handsome dude. Who else do we have? Oh, yes. We have Warren Berlinger as Coach Pat Patillo. He is known for The Long Goodbye. He played Morgan. He played Stu Percy in The World According to Garp. He played Polaroid TV host in That Thing You Do. And he played Judge Goines in Hero. I remember that one. Hero. That was a while ago, though, that I saw it. But I do remember that one. He's got 113 acting credits. He's been in a few things. Yes, he's in this episode of Murder, She Wrote. He's in another episode in 1986. And he's in another episode in 1989. All different characters. Huh. There's a lot of things in here that he's done that I have not seen. Operation Petticoat. That's a TV series. Chief Engineer Dobrich. Huh. He's a rather older actor in this one who's kind of the irascible coach. We also have, and I wish I was making this name up, Dick Butkus. Yep, Dick Butkus. That is his name. He is an actor with 52 acting credits. He is known for as Coach Mike Katowinski in Hang Time. Ed Klawicki in My Two Dads. Oh, God. My Two Dads. I remember that movie or television show. I blocked it out. He apparently played himself, Dick Butkus, in Gremlins 2, The New Batch, which I have seen, and he was opposing coach Game 3 on Any Given Sunday, which is a football movie. He played Earl Dent in 3 episodes of MacGyver, way back in the day. His last acting credit was in 2002, where he played himself in The Teddy Bear's Picnic. Wow. My Two Dads. I can't get over that one. Where is it? Murder, She Wrote. Tank Mason is who he plays in this episode. He also played Richard Ski Batowski in Blue Thunder, 11 episodes. Yeah, he's a big man. He definitely is the type of guy that you're like, yeah. Oh, yeah, it even says it right here. Graduated from the University of Illinois, where he was a 2-time All-American linebacker. A first-round draft pick of the Chicago Bears. So he was a football player that turned actor. And he's not a bad actor. I'll give him that. He is not a bad actor at all. Good old Dick Butkus. What a name. All right. Who else do we got? We got James. I think it's either McEachin or McCacken. Because I know a guy who has a last name of McCacken, and it's spelled similar to his last name here. So I think it might be McCacken. He's an African American actor. He is known for Victor Milson in 2010. Interesting. Al Monty in Play Misty for Me. Herb in Every Which Way But Loose, which is a Clint Eastwood movie. And Detective Barnes in Sudden Impact, which I think is also a Clint Eastwood movie. His last acting credit was a video short, Old Glory, 2007. He played Justice Jerome Morris in First Monday TV series. He played... Oh, wow. He played the same character in 7 episodes of Matlock. And then a different character in one more episode of Matlock years later. Which is cool. Been in a lot of Perry Mason TV movies. A lot of them. I'd say a good dozen Perry Mason or more TV movies. Maybe close to 15. That's a lot of TV movies he's been in. As Lieutenant Brock, the same character. Good on him. I wonder if he was in the actual TV show. He probably could have been. I think I skipped over My Murder, She Wrote. Yep. Grover Dillon, Sudden Death. That was the last one. Where's Perry Mason? Was he in that one? I don't think so. Yeah, it doesn't look like it. If he was, I'm missing it entirely. But he plays the equipment manager at the football team. Who have I missed? Let's see. I got him. This guy. Harris Talmadge is the character's name. Gary Lockwood is the actor's name. He plays the football commissioner for the area, who is very interested in the team. He was in 2001, A Space Odyssey, Dr. Frank Poole. He played Lieutenant William Rice in The Lieutenant. He played Alan Toots Tuttle, Splendor in the Grass. And Tony Ferris, They Came to Rob Las Vegas. Old movies. He is apparently in... I did not even hear about this. Apparently there is a 2017 film called Milton Stubbs. He's playing Morel James. Another 2017 film called Unbelievable. He plays Gary. And there's a movie, a TV movie, that does not have a release date on it. It's filming. Fleet Captain Gary Mitchell of Star Trek Equinox, The Night of Time. I have never heard of this. But he's apparently in a Star Trek movie. Go him. Alright. Murder, She Wrote. Here we go. He's in 4 episodes as 4 different characters. 1 in 85, 1 in 87, 1 in 91, and 1 in 94. He's in an episode of MacGyver, a few episodes of Simon and Simon. I vaguely remember that. T.J. Hooker, Scarecrow, Mrs. King, Trapper John, M.D. All these crime drama series that were in the 80s. Just glorious time. Barnaby Jones, he was in. 6 episodes of that. Oh, all kinds of stuff. All kinds of stuff. Way back to 1958. He was in. Wow. So yeah, he's been in a few things. He plays Harris Talmadge, as I said. There's also Mavis Kruger, who is Phil Kruger's wife, played by Elizabeth Savage, who only has 24 acting credits to her name, known for General Hospital, Loving, Rich Men, Single Women, and 13th Avenue, which I think are all soap operas. Murder, She Wrote would be down there. Yep, this is the only episode she was in. Not a lot. Not a lot of acting credits for her. And last but not least, because we really should talk about him, Lieutenant Clyde Pitts, played by Tim Thomerson. Or Thomerson, maybe. He is got 204 acting credits to his name. He is going. And he has been in... He was a hoodlum in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. He was Loy Colton in Near Dark. He was... Oh, wow. Now, this is one you guys might know. He was Jack Death in Trancers. And he was Dr. Jerry Moriarty in Fade to Black. He also reprised the role of Jack Death. Trancers, City of Los Angeles, a short in 2013. He's been The Late Show with David Letterman, Bob B.B. Boberson, I guess, 8 episodes of that. The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Ernie Swift, 2006. Days of Our Lives, he was in 7 episodes. He was in the Angry Beavers TV series as Leonard Beaver and Slap Johnson. So, I guess, I don't know. Let's see here. What else has he been in? Meleager the Mighty in Xena Warrior Princess. 2 episodes of that. Okay. Sirens. Sergeant James Buddy Zunder. Yep. Jack Death. Trancers 5. Sudden Death. Trancers 4. Jack of Swords. Wow. Sudden Death. D-E-T-H. Wow. That is 90s, man. Even though that came out in... Nope. It did come out in 1994. So 90s. 2 of them, 4 and 5, came out in 94. Wow. He was Brick Bardo in Doll Man versus the Demonic Toys. And I think also Doll Man. Trancers 3 as Jack Death. Yeah. Brick Bardo and Doll Man. So yeah, Doll Man, Trancers. You'll have seen this guy before. And he played... Lieutenant Clyde Pitts in the Murder, She Wrote episode that we're watching. As well as 1990, he was in an episode of Murder, She Wrote as Burt Rogers. That one's going to be a little while. 1990. Yeah. Good old Tim Thomerson. So these are our wonderful characters that we have. Now, what is this episode about? Well, the episode starts off rather interestingly because we don't get the title screen, the title of the episode, until a good 4 minutes in. What we do get is seeing a bunch of people coming out of the Home of Eternal Rest. And some of them are getting into a Happy Vale retirement home van to go home. They're a bunch of older people. We see Grover Dillon, our African-American fellow, coming out of the home with his keys. And then we see Jessica Fletcher leaving. And she gets spoken to by Mr. Lockwood, the lawyer, who calls out to her and offers his condolences for the loss, and that he was a friend of Jessica's Uncle Cyrus, who's passed away. But he was also a lawyer, and he is the one running, who officiated the will and is the keeper of the estate for her uncle. And there's not much to the estate. He lets her know. Just some ownership in a company called Jackdaw, and he's willing to take care of all the paperwork and whatnot if she wishes to sell her shares in it. And of course, Jessica is a little bit. She's just like, well, I'm gonna want to read this first. And he's like, well, yeah, I wouldn't want to bother you with any paperwork or anything. He's a little pushy, which gets her curiosity up. So she decides to hang on to it for a while and go and actually see what's going on, because he lets her know that Jackdaw Corporation is a holding company with only one asset, the Leopards football team. So she's like, a football team? Well, that's interesting. I think I'm going to go and check it out. So she seems very happy and excited. So she goes and runs off and goes to take a look at this football team. Then we cut to a bunch of football players and a bunch of tight ends. Ha ha ha! Football joke. Bending over, getting ready for the play, and that's when the title comes up: Sudden Death, which you guys will have seen already if you're watching this on the YouTube channel. I need to get around to doing my little podcast on like audio only. I don't know how to do that. I really need to figure it out. But anyways, Jessica's coming down onto the field, watching them go. There's like a little track around the field that she is kind of standing in, watching these guys play as the credits end up rolling. And a football helmet car ends up barreling down and almost runs Jessica over. There's a little girl driving it and an older man in the passenger seat. When the football car stops, because it's almost like a little golf cart, he jumps out, and it is Zach Farrell, a.k.a. Bruce Jenner. And he comes over and, checks to see if she's all right. She's like, oh, I'm fine. I shouldn't be standing in the streets not paying attention. The little girl gets out, and as Jessica says that she's probably going to have nightmares tonight about being eaten by a giant hat or head. That's when the girl is pantomiming or using sign language, and we end up finding out that she's deaf. And Jessica ends up signing a little bit to her in return, as well as talking so that she can read lips. And the little girl just seems ecstatic that somebody else might know some little sign language and whatnot. And before she gets introduced, Jessica gets introduced to Zach Farrell's wife, Kathy, as well, who's there. And before they go and head off, Jessica asks if the little girl, Jill, would mind teaching her some sign language later. And the little girl just seems super happy and excited. It's a nice little moment. The scene then cuts to a board meeting where we see Phil Kruger ripping into the lawyer, Mr. Lockford, the coach, because the team keeps losing. The equipment manager for speaking up about morale. The defensive lineman, Mr. Dick Butkus. That's not his real name. In this episode, it's Tank Mason. But he's ripping into all of them because he wants this team to perform. And he seems like the manager from hell. You immediately don't like him. And when Jessica ends up coming in, he basically tries to push her out. And he's like, you're not supposed to be here, lady, until the lawyer speaks up and says, "This is Mrs. Fletcher. She is part owner of the team now." And then Mr. Kruger's entire demeanor changes. He's like, "Oh, come in, come in." He introduces her to everybody. He shows her around the place, and he's very, very friendly and everything. Even though he does come out and say, "I want to buy your shares," and he wants to offer her, because they're about 24 grand, $24,000. He's like, "I'll give you 30 for it," and she's like, "I'm gonna think about it still, because I still don't know everything that's going on here, so I want to have some time to think about it." He invites her to a party over at somebody else's house. I think it's Tank Mason's house. He invites her over to this this party. The next thing we see is what's her name there? Kathy Farrell on the phone, and somebody is talking to her about getting her to convince her husband to quit the team, and if she doesn't, well, the truth about their daughter's going to come out, and it seems to be a pretty tense little thing. Zach comes in carrying his daughter, and they're like checking to see when dinner's going to be ready, and she says it's still going to be a little while, so go take a nap. Zach is rubbing his shoulder a bit, and he seems a little, because he's been injured. That's why he's not on the football team right now. He asks about the phone call, and she tries to brush it off as a wrong number, and he's like, "It's one of those anonymous calls, isn't it, about Jill?" And he gets quite incensed. He's convinced it's Kruger behind it. And she tries to calm him down, but he's having none of this. We see Jessica Fletcher checking into her hotel, and the coach is there waiting for her. And he catches her as she's walking by, and he's like, "Can I talk to you for a minute?" And he's like, he basically is, "I've been to the bank and talked to the mortgage." He's like, "I'd like to offer you $60,000 for your shares." Which makes her very, very interesting, because that's double what Mr. Kruger offered. And she asks, "Why? Why do you want to buy me out?" And he's like, I want to keep this team in the town. I love this town. I love this team." It's like Kruger just wants to move it to another city, a bigger city. So you automatically got some power play happening here. Something's going on. She, again, does not say one way or another what she's going to do. She wants to wait and see. They end up going to the party then, the next scene, with Kruger and Jessica. And Mr. Kruger kind of almost threatens Jessica in the car when she won't sell to him. Even to the point when he offers like $150,000. And he's just like, "I'm just letting you know, this is football, lady. People get hurt." It's a bit of a tense moment there. He definitely seems to be the sort of character, Mr. Kruger, that does not like to be brooked. He doesn't like to be bucked against and have anybody tell him no. So for Jessica to stand up to him and be standing her ground, he's just like, oh, headbutt. They come in. Jessica gets introduced to Mr. McCord, who is played by, what's his name? John Beck, Mr. Webb McCord. You see Tank Mason going around taking pictures, looking absolutely adorable. He looks like somebody's uncle. We see the coach, talking with the commissioner at the party, and it's even pointed out. Mr. Kruger's like, I'm going to go home. I need to make a few phone calls. So he heads home. Webb McCord tells Jessica here, he's like, the only thing you got to know about this party is to not let any of these guys fall on you. Because they're football players, they're all kind of big. It's a bit of a wild party to the point where a couple of guys are like picking up a girl in a dress and like literally throw her into the pool. So it's like definitely a wild party. Zach Farrell comes in looking for Kruger, but Kruger's not here. He heads over to the little bar and picks up the phone. Meanwhile, Webb McCord goes over to try and talk to Zach and calm him down. Both him and Mr. Dillon and the bartender overhear him talking to Kruger on the phone, saying he'll be there by 9 at his place. Then we see Mr. Talmadge, the commissioner, go and say hello to Jessica, and she's like, if you're offering to buy my shares, you'll have to get in line. And there's definitely some tension in Mr. Talmadge. He seems to be the sort of fellow that is very passionate about his football. So there's some of these things. We then see Baxter, who is the butler. I'm sorry. I thought it was Tank Mason's house. No, this is Mr. McCord's house. Webb McCord. It's his butler, Baxter. She asks him where Zach Farrell was, and he says that he just left. We see Zach going up to Mr. Kruger's house, pounding on the door, ringing the doorbell. Then he finds a note in the door, which he pulls out, reads, and crumples up and throws on the ground and stomps off. Next thing we know, we see the party in full swing. Good old Tank Mason is dancing around with Jessica Fletcher, having a grand old time, when Mr. McCord comes in and cuts in on the dancing. Tank, of course, goes and grabs his camera immediately and is like, I'm going to take a picture of these boys. He seems to have had a few drinks in him. He's definitely a little bit woozy. So he goes to head off, and Mr. McCord helps him away. They have Jessica has a little chat with Mr. Dillon, who's leaving to go home, and she goes and wanders off to have some more fun at the party. The next thing we see, it's the next day at the football stadium. Mr. Dillon is limping in, checking his papers, and he's on his desk, and he's like, wait a minute, is that water right here running? So he goes and wanders around to the back of his little room there, and he finds Mr. Kruger dead in a whirlpool bath. Oh no. The next thing we see, we've got Lieutenant Pitts on the phone with Jessica and Mr. Dillon and Mr. Mason and the coach sitting around as the detective, Mr. Pitts, is getting off the phone. Well, you realize the person he's talking to is not like his chief or anything. It's his bookie, because he's just put a bet down against the Leopards. Hilarious moment. He then has a talk with the security guard, who said he saw Mr. Farrell come in and then leave a little while later, looking bad. but that he did not see Mr. Kruger come in because he's got his own key for the back entrance, and he's not supposed to leave his desk. Jessica then asks Lieutenant Pitts if she can ask him a question, and he's just immediately like, "You're not supposed to be here, lady." She's like, "Oh, it's okay, I'm part owner." And he immediately changes his tune. She points out that there's something at the bottom of the tub. So Mr. Pitts goes and reaches down into it and pulls out a watch. Busted at a time of 9:05. But it's engraved on the back to Zach Farrell. It's Zach Farrell's watch. So he's basically convinced we got him dead to rights. So he's going to have to go and arrest Mr. Farrell. Bring him in for murder. It goes to the police station then, with Zach Farrell getting questioned by the detective. Miss Fletcher is there, and she seems to believe in his innocence. She's there as a visitor. And she asks what happened. Of course, he claims that he went to the house, nobody was there, he finds this note. The detective concurs that they did find it crumpled on the steps. He went to the stadium, but didn't see Mr. Kruger anywhere, because he was going to have it out with him. And of course, Mr. Pitts thinks it's because he's in a no-cut contract with the team. He's injured, but he's getting paid whether he plays or not. And it's a pretty a potent motive, but that's not why. It's a personal motive, and he's not getting into it right now. That's what he wanted to have out with Mr. Kruger. The next thing you see is Las Vegas with Mrs. Kruger getting a massage, and the lawyer talking to her about the fact that the divorce hasn't been finalized yet. So she needs to get home and play the grieving widow because she could be worth a lot of money. He's going to have the papers drawn up right away. Mr. Sleazy Lawyer. The next thing you see, we see Jessica and Kathy. Kathy's went to Jessica's hotel, and she wants Jessica's help in clearing her husband's name because she doesn't believe that he could do it, and if he gets put away, what's that going to do to their little daughter? Very traumatic. So Jessica gets roped into actually really investigating. We cut to the football stadium where the coach is berating the players about playing well. And just as a play is about to happen, Jessica is like on the field and waving, and Tank is immediately like, "Hey, Mrs. Fletcher," and gets tackled. It's kind of comical. And he just kind of lays on the ground afterwards. I mean, I don't think he's that hurt, despite the fact that he's just like laying there like he's dead. Jessica has a question for the coach about this no-cut contract, which he explains to her that, you know, he's getting paid whether he wrestles or not, so he's kind of useless right now. He's dead weight, and they can't fire him. So after she leaves, the coach goes and berates the players some more and pushes them around and tells them to get going. We see the Mr. Dillon laying out towels for the boys in the locker room, and she comes in to talk to him, and again he basically says, "You're not supposed to be here," and she's like, "Oh, it's okay, I'm part owner." And she asks him a few questions about her Uncle Cyrus and the fact they used to be friends. He used to have shares in the team, and he used to actually play for the team before he got an injury. Mr. Kruger, who was the coach at the time, put him back in before he was fully healed, and it basically messed up his career. She also asks about the lockers and if he has the combination to them all, because from what Zach said, somebody took his watch out of the locker. And, of course, Mr. Dillon gets a little upset at being accused of stealing. Good old Tank Mason ends up walking into the locker room, naked as the day he's born, and sees Miss Fletcher there and immediately pulls a towel down to cover himself. And, of course, Jessica doesn't seem to click on the fact that she's in the men's locker room and there's all these naked men around, until she realizes he's got this really uncomfortable expression on his face. And then it clicks and dawns, and she's like, "Oh, well, would you look at the time? I need to go. Do, 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 do." And off she runs. We then see Mr. McCord and the commissioner and the detective all shooting skeets together. And over at Webb McCord's place, Baxter brings her over here, and they have she has a question for the lieutenant about the case. Just a little bit of a question. Of course, the commissioner has a few words to say as well. And Jessica kind of pisses him off a little bit with her words to him, because that's just how she rolls. Baxter ends up leading her off, and they they shoot a couple more skeets. The next thing we see is Jessica sneaking into the stadium, past the security guard, because she was very interested in there being another way. So she's setting out to prove it. And in she gets. She sneaks right past the poor guy. Then gets into one of the lockers, I believe Zach Farrell's, quite handily, as a matter of fact. And of course she hears something. She calls out, asking if anybody's there, but nobody answers. And she goes into a small enclosed room to kind of check things out there. And while she's in there, someone barricades the door from the outside, so she can't get out. The room, as we find out, is a sauna room, because after it's been barricaded, this mysterious somebody cranks the temperature up to the highest setting. Oh no, Jessica's going to be in trouble. She tries to get out, but to no avail. She's not in there long enough to do any serious harm to herself. She's probably only in there for like a couple of minutes before somebody comes and opens the door. But it's still one of those tense moments, because a serious amount of heat, that can kill a person if they can't get away from it. Mr. Dillon ends up coming and getting her out. And she's like, "The door must have been jammed." And he's like, "It wasn't jammed, Mrs. Fletcher. Somebody's trying to kill you." She's like, No, somebody just scared me off." And she isn't going to be scared that easily. No, sir. Then we see good old Tank Mason, Mr. Dick Butkus, doing some exercises on the field, and Jessica comes up in her jogging suit. And bless his heart, Mr. Tank Mason. He basically tries to tell her, he's trying to pay her a compliment by saying, that she's pretty pretty sturdy for an old broad, or she's remarkably well preserved. And he's like, open mouth, insert foot. And of course, she understands he's not trying to be disrespectful or anything. He just has that way of talking. Then we cut to see Jessica learning sign language from Jill. And it's another adorable little moment with the little girl. She goes and heads off, and Jessica manages to get the truth from Kathy and Zach that Jill's adopted. And the adoption may not have been entirely legal. They paid a lot of money for her because they couldn't have a child normally. And so somebody has been basically calling and threatening to out them. And the lawyer who facilitated the adoption was Mr. Lockwood. So he would know about this. Interesting. Next thing we see is Jessica talking to Amos back home in Cabot Cove, and that she's going to be home in a couple of days. And then she's like, "Oh, the tub's going. I need to go and I need to go check on the tub." So in she gets to the tub and manages to turn it off just in time before it overflows. And as she does, she notices an earring at the bottom of the drain. So she goes and pulls it out and gets her sleeve wet and whatnot, when somebody comes knocking at her door. And she goes to open it and finds Mr. Harris Talmadge, the commissioner. And that he wants to have a few words with her. He definitely wants her to sell those shares, to keep it in town. Keep the football team in town. And she doesn't want to sell right away. She still hasn't got her head wrapped around this yet. And until she does, she's not going to. Now at this point, the commissioner goes and heads out, and he makes a comment about two women owners, which gets Jessica's attention. Because apparently Jessica didn't know that Mr. Kruger had a wife, and now she stands to inherit those shares. And that gets Jessica's attention. So she heads over to Mr. Kruger's place the next day to have a look around, and finds the door open. Nobody around. She calls out. Nobody answers. She ends up wandering upstairs and finding her way into the bathroom, where she is looking around and ends up noticing something because of the carpet. She notices that the carpet is soaked. Absolutely soaked right through. And she definitely seems to have this. She sits down on the tub and she's like, "It's wet." Of course. And we see a shadow of a woman with a gun, who then comes in, and it's Mrs. Kruger, and tells Jessica to not move an eyelash. Jessica's, of course, "You must be Mrs. Kruger." And she introduces herself as Jessica Fletcher. Of course, Mrs. Kruger's like, "What are you doing in my bathroom?" And of course, Kruger's like, "Well, I'm going to call the police." Jessica's like, "That's a great idea. Ask for Lieutenant Pitts, please." The scene kind of changes to Lieutenant Pitts checking the carpet, and Jessica explaining her theory that perhaps Mr. Kruger was drowned here and moved later. Of course, Mr. Pitts is like, "That's an arresting theory, Mrs. Fletcher." This is a line he actually says. "That's an arresting theory, Mrs. Fletcher." My goodness. Of course, Mrs. Kruger leaves because her husband was probably murdered in here. She's going to a hotel. And she's got an idea as to who may have done it, but it will be difficult to prove. But, of course, she has an idea. So the next scene we go to is the day of the football game. The coach is delivering a pep talk to the team, which is extremely dour and somber, and it ends with the team filing out with music playing that's like dun 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 dun. That's the music that they file out to. Very, very uplifting, very, very spiritual. Of course, Jessica's like, maybe the coach is using reverse psychology. Not a very good pep talker, this coach. After everybody leaves, you see the lieutenant there making a phone call to his bookie again. Jessica is, of course, captivated by some photographs that Mr. Mason put up on the bulletin board of the party, and she pulls a couple of them down and is comparing them. They're both of her and Mr. McCord at the party. The next thing we see is everybody up in the big booth watching the game, enjoying it, and there's a phone call for Mr. McCord. Says it's urgent. The lady on the other end is from the cleaners, saying that her boss wanted her to call him and let him know that the jacket he brought in to get dry cleaned is missing a button, and it was missing a button when he dropped it off. So they wanted to make sure that they weren't going to be blamed for losing that button. And he's like, "Oh, well, okay." Next thing we see is him in the bathroom of Mr. Kruger with like a drain snake trying to search in the drain. Of course, Jessica interrupts, asking if he's looking for this button. And we find out that it was Jessica who had pretended to be the cleaning lady. Of course, he asks about the button. He's like, "Baxter told you that my thing was missing a button?" She's like, No, you aren't missing a button at all. See, your butler told me that he dropped a blazer off the cleaners for you. So I thought this would get you here, because a button ended up catching a killer in Los Angeles. So I thought it would work again, and it did. She used an old ruse, the old missing button trick, and he fell for it. Now, the entire confrontation here is not like other confrontations. He admits to what he did to Jessica, to the point that Jessica's laying it all out, and he's agreeing to it and whatnot. But he's extremely confident the entire time, to the point where you get the impression that he's probably going to try and kill Jessica. And he does. He even threatens her, saying that they'll find her body in the ashes of this house. And I'm like, wow, that's cold, man. Of course, it's at that point that good old Lieutenant Pitts comes in and catches him in the act. and is like, "Book him, Dano." He doesn't say Dano, but he does say book him. And the reason why Jessica found out was the two pictures. He was wearing a single-breasted blazer in the first picture. The second picture that was taken, he was wearing a double-breasted blazer. So her deduction was the first blazer got wet while he was drowning Mr. Kruger. And good old Lieutenant Pitts. Of course, after they arrest him, he like turns on the TV and he's all like, "We missed the last half of the game." And you end up finding out that the Leopards pulled a victory out of almost certain defeat. And she's like, "Wow, that's amazing. Isn't that great?" And of course, Lieutenant Pitts, who had been betting against the Leopards the entire time, is just like, yeah, that's great. That's wonderful." And for our final scene, we see Jill driving Jessica around in the giant football helmet golf cart with Zach and Kathy watching. Zach, of course, making a comment about his daughter being the first female quarterback and going to have to run fast, which is kind of nice. I like that. And of course, Zach is apparently making a deal with the coach and the others to get himself shares to be on the management of the team. And makes a comment about him and Jessica being partners. And she's like, no, I have to go back to Cabot Cove, focus on my writing. So I put my shares in a trust for Jill, the little girl, so that when she turns old enough, she'll get those shares. And then she tells Jill that her and her father are going to be partners. So she wants Jill to write her and let her know how her father is doing. And of course the little girl agrees to, and they have a nice touching hug, and the credits roll. And everything is all wrapped up into a nice, neat little bowl. I enjoyed this episode a lot. This was a fantastic episode. It had some comedy moments and some amusing bits, as well as some nice drama and touching human moments to it. I enjoyed it quite a lot. It was one of the better episodes of the season. I don't know about the best episode because I haven't finished watching this season. When we get to the last episode of this season of the Murder, She Wrote Rewatch podcast, I will let you know which episode out of all of them that I enjoyed the most. So that's going to be it for this episode of the Murder, She Wrote Rewatch podcast. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, if you like what I'm doing, please give that like button a tap. Give that subscribe button a tap as well if you haven't already, so you can be kept apprised of when I do new videos. And throw a comment in the comment section. What do you think about this particular episode where we had Bruce Jenner, somebody who's rather famous in the news now as Caitlyn Jenner. But back then, he was famous as an Olympic swimmer, I believe. That's what he is. So I don't know. It's going to be very, very interesting. Next episode, we have Jessica setting out to clear the name of a friend who's a prime suspect in a murder case. Jessica meets mystery rhyme writer Horace Lynchfield in San Francisco. Both came for a literary award. And somebody else is, somebody gets murdered. I think he gets blamed. We'll see what's going to be going on. It should be interesting. So join me next time for that particular one, Footnote to Murder. Join me for Jessica Fletcher solving crimes. And join me for more murder.